Ready?
Yep.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Today is Wednesday. What's our date? July, August 4th, 2021. Time is 1:04 p.m. This is we are meeting to essentially conclude our budget deliberations so that we can go on and our finance director can proceed with the publishing of the budget. Attending are Commissioners Brooks and Fillios. Commissioner Duncan is in flight en route back from the East Coast and will not be attending this meeting. We just learned. But in any case, we will proceed. And do we have any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, off we go. Finance Director Dena Darrow, take it away, please.
Thank you, Commissioners. Welcome. Is everybody excited? This is the big
Yes.
deal. Yes. All the work from all the departments, everybody working so hard this year. We are ready to go. So I just wanted to give you some highlights of what's actually in this budget and all the work that you've accomplished. So our goal today is to just give a high-level review of what's in the budget and then have you tentatively approve it for publication. Once published in the newspaper 2 times per statute, the budget can be changed at the budget hearing, but it can only be reduced. And the auditor's office would ask that you not make any changes after today because it's a lot. So we did have some new information come forward from the sheriff, and we will address that after this presentation to discuss if you wanted to add a request in at the last minute, because of course after today we can't add that request in. So we're going to give you a quick breakdown of revenue, look at some new expenditures for 2022, do a year-over-year comparison, and what the process is, next steps. I did send these documents to you ahead of time so you had a chance to review them, so nothing's really a surprise here. So our total revenue, which is our total budget, $108.9 million this year. Of that, 53.8 is property tax. That's about a $2.1 million increase over last year. That includes new growth as well as the 3%. Our non-property tax revenue is $55 million. A lot of that was fines, fees, distributions from the state for liquor, sales tax, those kinds of things. Fund balance use, that includes solid waste, $4.7 million. And then grants for personnel, about $2.2 million. So about 4% of the budget increase is covered by taxes, and the rest, 6%, is covered by other revenue sources. So personnel increases, $5 million total. Some new positions and some changes, about 1.4. We did put in a mid-year reserve for compression and adjustments. Of that $950,000, $300,000 is dedicated to the sheriff's jail. COLA and step increase we have estimated at $2.4 million, and our medical increase $288,000 under what we expected, so that really saved us there. Operating expenses went up. Mainly because we changed the threshold for capital. So we saw a big jump, but that was driven by capital. $285,000 for onboarding of new positions. Our capital, pretty small. About half of that is solid waste, maybe even a little bit more than half. And the key spending for the new capital, 1.3 for IT infrastructure. The vehicle lease for KCSO, it's in its last year, that's $700,000. The rest is mainly building maintenance, machinery, and equipment, rounds out that number. And then to look year over year, our fund balance use in both restricted and assigned went down. We were pretty judicious with our fund balance use this year. Like I stated before, our non-tax revenue growth went up about 6%. That really helped us. mid-year payroll growth along with overtime adjustments. We did pre-adjust overtime by using averages and what the departments felt that they would need. That's about 4.9 million. Our operations growth, about 148,000. So we're running a pretty lean organization. Our main costs are in personnel. Net cost for new personnel, 2.7 million. And then our growth of benefits, as I mentioned before, year over year, we actually went down. Our speed of increase went down. We still went up, but by far less. And our new capital growth, pretty modest, less than $500,000. So this we probably should include this in our public hearing, but I thought this was interesting to see. I gave an arithmetic levy rate for 2022 because, of course, we're using a kind of a contrived levy rate that's based on House Bill 389. But if we look at the levy rate, which is just our budget divided by our new property value, that's what our arithmetic levy rate is for this year. And if you compare that to last year's levy rate, we went down again. So for a $100,000 property, taxpayers are going to see a $20.41 decrease in their property taxes.
Per 100,000.
Per 100,000.
Okay.
And property value growth year over year, 3.4 billion in 1 year. I don't think I've ever seen that ever.
13%
here.
increase.
It's enormous. So that is what's driving taxes. It's definitely not our budget that's driving taxes. It's the values going up. So next steps. So today, hopefully preliminary approval of the numbers that you decide on. If you decide to modify today, that's fine. But once today's over, we modify that. We publish it twice in the Coeur d'Alene Press. Our public budget hearing is on August 25th, starting at 6 p.m. That's when the party starts. And on September 7th, by statute, we will adopt your approved budget, and we'll be done.
Okay.
So that is what I have. And then I also have a year-over-year comparison, which is not showing in the screen.
Did you close the?
Okay, can we see it now? Okay, well, I won't show it. So suffice to say, we did a pretty good job of getting the budget together. So now, I'm going to hand off to the sheriff to talk about some new developments. Let's see if I can find this here.
Commissioners, Robert Norris, Sheriff. I want to talk to you about a situation that you're very familiar with. It's something that we've been bringing to your attention for quite a while. And we are scheduled to talk about it tomorrow. However, Mrs. Darrow has said it's probably best that we have this conversation today. And it has to do with a mandated requirement in our jail. And I know that I have talked to you as a board individually about this situation, but it's just deteriorating fairly quickly as far as coverage of personnel within the jail. We are finding it, and I know that there's light at the end of the tunnel, that the board has approved us to change and convert some control room operators to deputy sheriffs. We're having difficulty in hiring deputy sheriffs also. But it is, I would consider no longer a bleeding. I would consider it a hemorrhage with anticipation of possibly a wave of COVID hitting our community and our jail that raises the cost again. And I would say we are at critical mass. We currently have 5 employees that are out, all in the jail regarding COVID. And the prognosis of hiring for a control room operator or deputy sheriffs in the jail at approximately $16 or $21 or $20.
21.
$21 is being very challenging. So I'm asking you to, what can I do? What can we do? I know that human resources relies heavily on these wage studies, but wage studies don't prevent people from hurting each other in the jail, and wage studies don't prevent people from harming themselves in the jail, and wage studies don't protect the community. So with that, I will hand it over to Captain Deak and Lieutenant Hutcheson for any further explanation and details.
Thank you, Sheriff. Commissioners, Captain Andy Deak for the record. What the sheriff is true, what he says is true. In addition to what we're about to present to you, there's another cloud in the horizon that's coming over us. Spokane County just announced hiring bonuses of $25,000 to sign on for detention and patrol staff. Coeur d'Alene PD just approved hiring the new police officers there, which will attract people out of the sheriff's office as well, including detention. With the hemorrhaging that's happening at the jail specifically, Lieutenant Hutcheson and I have sat down together. We have a couple proposals for you, which is emergency action that we might need to do. What our preliminary numbers are showing us is it's probably going to be budget neutral based on what our overtime budget has been and what we've proposed for next year. There may be a little bit of increase in there. That's what we've looked at. But I just want to reassure you that it's not exorbitant, but it does require board acknowledgement as well as approval. The first option that we're looking at is a on-call status for our detention deputies so that we can mandate that they are available when they're off duty to, one, respond if needed for an overtime coverage. Right now, they're reaching burnout levels that are at critical levels. It's hard to get them to respond when they're on days off. I'm out of town, I'm on vacation, whatever. I'm not gonna be here. So if we put them on on-call status, that will make them available for response, but there is a cost associated with that. The other option is to call them in for overtime and schedule it ahead of time if we can. If not, we end up dragging patrol in, which we're doing right now as well. Still an added cost of 1.5 versus 0.5 on the pay. The second proposal that we're looking at, which we don't really want to go there unless we have to, this is the last ditch, is canceling people's vacations that have been pre-approved and planned. We would ask the board that if we do cancel those vacations, to reimburse the employee at 1.5 of their cost of what their rate is. And again, it's budget neutral because we would be paying somebody to come in and fill that overtime position at 1.5. Now we're keeping that employee here basically at that same rate, but we're compensating them for the loss of that time off as well with their families, which adds to the burnout factor and everything else. So I'm going to let Lieutenant Hutcheson, he's prepared a great memo, which you should have in front of you as well as in your email. He's going to go through and highlight the memo, and then we also have some initial figures that we put together. Obviously, the auditors can take a look at that in more detail in the next day or two to get exact numbers, but we had about 2 hours to prepare it. So with that, I'll pass this off to Lieutenant Kyle Hutcheson.
As the sheriff and captain said, staffing is getting difficult. We're mandating deputies to work 2 or 3 shifts over their scheduled days off. This last pay period, on the high end, one deputy worked 52 hours of overtime. Control room operator worked 54 and a half hours of overtime in their 80-hour pay period. We've been mandating regularly. Staff are beginning to say no, and we're going to be in a bad situation when our staff leave because they're working on their days off. I could read the whole memo, but I assume you have it and have read it. I'll just piggyback on what the captain said regarding the on-call pay. The one thing he did not say is right now, for a day shift, we require 12 deputies to be on to run the jail. That's still pretty tight, but that allows for an emergency transport, 1 deputy to take off. If someone calls in sick, there's 1 extra body to cover where needed. My proposal is to drop my minimum to 11 So require one less deputy to be there, likely on overtime, and pay them at a half rate to be on call. So when that emergency happens, or that emergency transport happens, or someone leaves sick, we can pick up the phone and get somebody in. Right now, it's on overtime at time and a half. If they're on call, they're at halftime. So in my mind, worst case scenario, we're even. Best case scenario, it's a third of the cost. That'd be our first ask, is to approve that on-call pay. These numbers right here are simply, if a deputy was on call 24/7 all year long, it would be $97,000. If a deputy was covering overtime 24/7, it would be $291,000. So right now we're essentially spending the $291. I'd like to be closer to the 97. Likely it'll be somewhere in the middle. But in my mind, cost neutral or a cost reduction in the end. It's not a great way to run a jail long term, but for a short term emergency situation, I think it's both budget beneficial and beneficial to my staff to have some days off. The second would be the vacation buyback. We would only allow a vacation buyback if it meant someone was not coming in on overtime to cover that vacation. So in my mind, again, we can pay someone 1.5 times their wage to buy back their vacation and work their shift, or we can pay somebody time and a half to come in and fill for that vacancy. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
I have one question. Captain Deak, did you say that Spokane County Detention is now offering $25,000 for
Signing bonuses for
a
Spokane
for a
County.
detention deputy?
I believe so. I have to confirm that. I did hear today, so. And that's from 2 sources.
Commissioner, just one thing I want to point out. This is, part of this affects the current budget year, and part of it would affect the upcoming budget year. And so we could split those numbers out, but the problem's now, so we thought it much more appropriate to bring it to your attention now than later. And plus Dena told me to. And I do whatever Dena says.
Okay.
He is my favorite undersheriff.
As I should be.
Bill?
Well, you know, we go through the budget process with all the different departments, and I want to say, not in good fun, but in good faith horse trading. A little of that, a little of this, a little less of that, a little more of that. And we do that with each department. And hopefully we'll arrive at an answer that makes sense and isn't wasteful with our money. It's even not our money, it's taxpayer money. But I feel like what you brought us here is not a horse trading negotiating posture. And I appreciate that. And I'm inclined, I mean, this is not going to go on for the next fiscal year, correct?
Well, we can't predict.
Well, what you're asking us to pass here, is there a finite, go ahead.
It likely will, because even if we had all the positions hired by the start of the fiscal year, you're looking at about 6.5, 7 months of training before that candidate becomes viable. They're still unplugged. We don't have those positions working by themselves. They're paired up with somebody, which also creates a void, or we have to backfill with overtime, because that trainee is not they don't get to work right away.
So let me ask you,
Yes, sir.
what's the total price tag for this?
We think it's a wash. I mean, it may end up
Well,
being a wash.
just how much?
It's impossible to-
We don't know.
Which one? Are you talking about the
Whole ball of, I mean, I'm assuming you need everything you're talking about,
on-call pay? We would reduce our number by 1, so someone wouldn't be working overtime.
okay?
And they'd
But I
be-
mean, there's a finite number where you take all that stuff down and distill it.
We don't know if we're gonna have the same staff a month from now. 5 of them may leave for other places. We may get 5 more hired. We don't know that. And I would love to, this is preemptive. And we are bleeding right now. We'd like to start this tomorrow.
I'm willing to approve it all, but I want to know what I'm approving.
Anything that we spend is going to reduce the overtime budget by,
I understand that.
so it's really just transferring funds from an overtime to so like, the cost isn't
So
possible to predict.
do you anticipate then that this would not overall increase your budget? This would be a net neutral?
It should decrease it, because right now, we're
Okay.
covering 100% overtime,
Okay,
and if someone's on call, they're gonna be a third of their rate rather than 1.5 times their rate.
Sure, so for the on-call part, but for the vacation buyout, do you need extra resources in 2022 to make sure that you cover vacation buyout?
It's probably appropriate for you to answer, because right now, if we buy out someone's vacation, someone is, that person's not working their shift, and we're not backfilling with overtime at time and a half. So it should be neutral.
It should be neutral, but I'm thinking out loud here. If we want to make sure that this program, which sounds like is going to go on at least for fiscal year 22, we want to make sure that there's ample resources. So we could put in a pooled amount, we could add it to the amount that we have for the compression and just add to that pool and increase the budget by whatever number you deem, or we can just not change anything and just hope for the best and kind of keep an eye on it and monitor it. And then going into the next fiscal year, if we start seeing the budget levels drop, would the board be willing to dip into contingency or fund balance or some other funding source? So I guess we can hope for the best and know that in the future we might need to pull some money and not change anything, or we can pick a number.
I'm not comfortable with just picking a number.
Right. And
What
I'm not either.
what
but,
do you recommend?
well, so cost to buy max vacation hours. So this is what you anticipate the full amount?
If every single detention deputy and control room operator sold 40 hours of vacation and didn't take it, that's what it would cost.
Okay. So it sounds like between that and vacancies, 100,000?
Okay, let me ask this question. We've scheduled a meeting for tomorrow to basically go over this. So are we doing it today instead of tomorrow?
Yes.
We could.
Okay.
Point
Darrow-
number 2, we're not going to make a decision today. That's out of the question, okay? An emergency didn't occur overnight. This is building up over time. I understand that the COVID thing is pretty much extraneous, but I made a commitment to Commissioner Duncan. She wants to be here for the discussion, and we could potentially do that as early as maybe Friday. But second point is, what is your deadline? Your deadline theoretically was today.
Our deadline theoretically was Monday, and this meeting was moved to today. So that's why I sent out on Monday, I sent out all the documents to you because our statutory deadline to stop the budget was Monday. So today we're just confirming the budget as we understand it. But since we're here, I wanted the sheriff to have an opportunity
No, that's
to
fine.
speak, because if we feel that there's going to be a large fluctuation in the FY22 budget, for transparency's sake, we would want to at least put something in the budget if we felt that we were going to go over.
Can we get board acknowledgement of we can keep it budget neutral with what we've already presented for the FY22 budget, but acknowledgement that if and when this does occur, we implement it. You've authorized it. We have on-call if we need to use it, as well as vacation buyback, which fits into our existing overtime or salaries that are there, with the salary savings as well included in that. And if it gets to the point where we go over that, and because of however many events that we had to cancel or on call, we're gonna let you know each month the status of if we have to do that, if it becomes critical at that point. But at least the board's acknowledging that it's part of what wasn't presented in our, we didn't have an on-call, we didn't have vacation buyback in there, but listing those as part of the A budget with maybe a zero balance there. But as we attach these numbers, it'll be part of the overall A budget showing where that's been applied. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But what I want to do is I want to do this together with the actual final approval. So with Commissioner Duncan not here, with Leslie not being here, and I really want to get the three of us weighing in, and we can do it, we can do both at the same time. And so what are we looking at? Friday? Does that mess you up?
Well, it depends on when the Coeur d'Alene Press can publish, because we have to publish twice in the newspaper before a public hearing.
Public
So,
hearings on the 25th.
Right. So we have to do next week and the week after. We need to do a publishing of whatever this budget is.
That shouldn't be a problem.
Hey,
Okay.
Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we put a placeholder there and you voted in deference to Dena and trying to get her and her budget along the way, if you put a placeholder on that we could decide on today and you approve that you can always reduce it, you just can't add to it.
Correct.
So I guess what I'm seeing is, and Leslie can have her opportunity to discuss it. If you want to reduce the amount, you can. But to help Dena out, I think maybe what we could do is arrive at a number, and also to Bill's point, to put a number there for a placeholder. And for instance, with the vacation buyback, do I think everybody in the entire jail is going to roll 40 hours over? No. So I could come to you and say, well, it would be great to put a $128,000 placeholder there. However, it's probably not necessary in the context of what we're trying to accomplish today. So, you know, I'm going to defer to you guys, but is there a number better than that we can do? I mean, what would you say?
I think what you said is a fair statement. These are ballpark numbers. We don't have a crystal ball. So we were asked to bring a number, and that's what we have right now.
So I would
Okay,
propose.
so obviously, well, we're seeing this for the first time, okay?
Absolutely.
And, okay, so you've got on-call here figured at 97,000. Yes? That's what I'm looking at. That's your low end.
Yep.
What are you thinking, Dena, in terms of a placeholder?
Well, it sounds like the on-call is going to be paid for by currently budgeted overtime, correct?
Yes.
I think
Okay.
we're asking for nothing. I think we're asking for approval to spend at a third to have on call rather than time and a half out of the overtime budget. But it seemed like in the interest of full disclosure, we would talk to you first before we started using all on-call pay rather than overtime pay.
So if we're going to put it in as, if we're going to put it in as a placeholder, I'd like to go in with, if we're going to do anything with the 97,000.
Well, we don't need to put in 97, I think,
ahead.
because this is already paid for. Because instead of using overtime, you're taking one person and you're putting them on call rather than paying them for a full day.
Okay?
So having that person on call instead of on duty pays for that. So in my understanding, and am I getting this right? So the on-call projections is budget neutral.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
If you have to call them in and they actually leave their home, they're on call at 0.5 of their regular rate, and you call them in, then it converts to that 1.5.
Which is
but
also
it's
budgeted.
Still lower, but it's budgeted, yes.
Right.
Okay, now, are we talking fiscal 21 or 22, or does it not matter?
It's, well, I'm talking fiscal 22.
22, okay, go ahead.
22, which is why I asked them to bring this today, because if there was anything that needed to be added to the budget, we'd want to. So it sounds like the on-call piece doesn't need to be added because it's already funded.
Right now, we're bringing 12 people in to man the jail. One's on overtime. I want to drop to 11 and keep that person at home on
So-
call, and then call them should we need them.
So if it's already funded, it's more of a policy question.
Yes.
Yes, which is why I think Leslie wants to be here, because
Okay,
she's.
that's fine.
Yeah.
But
So
we're
then-
asking for it as well. Well, I guess it's a matter of building that into the budget line item, having another.
We can just have it on a timesheet. I'm most concerned about funding.
Okay.
So I think for the on-call piece, if philosophically, if the board is okay with that, I think you can discuss that anytime you want because the money's there. I think it's more, like you said, a policy question at this point. So I'm not worried about that. But if there is some vacation buyback, do we need to put some extra resources in there for that? And what's the lowest you can go, I think is what everybody's kind of wondering.
We're spending it out of overtime right now. So
Right.
I don't know how you take overtime funds and use them for vacation buyback, but it would be a wash in the end.
Again, I think a policy decision, can we do that? Is the philosophy of the board that you're okay with paying less overtime and using those overtime dollars to pay for a vacation buyback?
Right.
And I think, again, that's gonna be a conversation for the three of you.
That is
But
correct.
if we're all saying that this is probably gonna be budget neutral,
Are
then
you
we're
talking-
probably not gonna need to do anything
Vacation buyback.
today.
Yeah, you're talking about the vacation buyback being neutral as well. I'm a little leery of being that confident in those numbers because I don't want to come back here later on saying, well, you know, actually we
We
were,
didn't budget enough.
yeah.
Right.
And here would, if you're looking for a bottom line number, because there's two things in play and there's a lot, there's the vacation buyback as well as the on-call pay. Again, you can reduce this when Leslie's here. I fully respect that part of it. But if we plug a number in there, I feel safer going forward because we don't spend it, you get it back. And you guys can monitor how it's put
Well,
into action.
and I think
like-
Dena's addressed that, right?
Well, if you want to increase the budget today, as a backstop for vacation buyback. We would just have to pick a number
Yes.
that you were comfortable with, that you felt was reasonable, and we just put that in, and then if at the budget hearing you wanted to reduce that amount, you could do that.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm not gonna do that.
Okay,
I'm gonna wait till Leslie's here because she needs to be on record when we take a vote. So
okay,
I'm gonna basically include that along with the vote on the budget in general. So we need to reschedule or rather continue the meeting.
okay,
Maybe that's a better term. So I think she's gonna be back, I think, tomorrow afternoon. So we can do this on Friday.
okay. All right,
Is that gonna screw you up though, trying to get your?
It
what you
shouldn't.
accomplished today?
well, I would like to get this done, but if we have to do this and, you know, extenuating circumstances, we want to make sure that it's right.
Unfortunately, this is unforeseen. She's on a flight. I don't know what the logistics are, but she's unable to call in, so we'll do it.
Okay,
We'll take up the two at the same time.
okay, all right. So Friday we'll get an answer, and then we're gonna publish.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
I don't have our schedule, but I can talk to,
are you
maybe
looking at?
Nancy can pull it up.
But Friday,
I think we're open, aren't we?
all day?
Better in the morning, huh?
Better in the morning for me.
9 a.m.?
We may have to be upstairs.
We have the blood drive? Okay, we'll have to go with a limited audience then. So we'll meet upstairs.
Okay?
9 a.m.?
All right,
9
you got
a.m.
it.
Friday, today is what, the 4th? That would be the 6th. And we'll wrap it up,
Sounds good.
okay? Dr. Keene?
Chris, I was wondering if we could look at the total balance sheet one more time so that we know
Sure.
where we're at on revenues and expenses that are for this budget.
And if I might add, just to conclude the previous discussion, is that this is not a problem that's likely to go away anytime soon. And we've been talking about it for a while, and it's very, very difficult to attract personnel, people, candidates at that control room operator pay, and just like you to take that in consideration. And I know these wage studies take a long time, but I don't know what the answer is. I'm asking you to help provide me with solutions, so you're in charge of the purse.
Yeah, we are, but we have to have data to back up our decisions and hence the wage studies. But we've made adjustments. We've increased the hiring. We're doing what we can. I don't know that it's going to help you get people in any faster simply because of the labor shortage, which is frankly affecting the entire nation at this point. So we'll do what we can. And I think we're moving as quickly as we can. Whether we can handle $25,000 bonuses is a whole other matter, but
Moving at the speed of government, huh?
in some ways, we move faster than private industry at times, but anyway. Okay, so anything, I'm sorry, Dr. Keene, you wanted to see,
Well, I know that we have to have a balanced budget up there, but on the previous discussions, there was the sales tax and the liquor tax came in. You utilize all of that, and some of that went to the fund balance.
Yes, we reduced our fund balance use by about, when it all shook out, about 200,000. Yeah.
okay. Keith, you had a question? Our adult misdemeanor probation director, go right ahead, sir.
You doing, am I on the speaker?
Yeah, you're on the world.
Yes, I did put it in my budget. It was, for the call out for the probation officers. But it was budget neutral because if you remember correctly, I suggested for each week of their own call, they actually have one day off. And, just making sure that, that we move forward with that. I talked to Sylvia from HR. It's more of a policy, where you have to give direction saying that's okay for us to do. Because it's time, so it's still technically a financial decision. So that's what I'm asking for you to do is if you could have direct HR to move forward, and it's going to be an internal thing with us.
Is this something new?
I brought it forward on the budget.
Did we include it? Do you know?
I think there was a philosophical discussion about on-call pay in general.
That's
And I-
correct.
So, because it's budget neutral, from where I'm sitting, that's something that needs to be worked out with leadership.
Yeah, we're gonna take it up on Friday. Because if we're gonna take up the sheriff's situation, we'll probably take up yours along with it. Okay?
Yeah, but
It's not, and Dena's absolutely right. It comes back to a policy question. There are differences of opinion regarding on-call pay. And it can be budget neutral, but for some people, it goes beyond that.
correct, and that's where I was just trying to bring something forward. It was pretty neat that the officers actually came together and said, hey, we want the family time. They're staying, here, and with the way the laws have changed and everything else, where the misdemeanor laws, if it doesn't take place in front of the officer, we have a lot of flexibility by people being on probation. So our call load has gone up on that aspect.
So what specifically are you advocating for?
The one day off for each week that they work, and they have to use it within 90 days.
Okay.
So it's one day off. They have to use it within 90 days for each week that they work. And they average call outs usually is about 5 a year. 5 weeks a year. So each
Okay.
person's about 5.
Okay.
And that would be monitored internally.
I just have a clarification question. So it's one day off per week that they're on call?
Yes.
Or when they get called out?
No, for the whole entire week.
That they're on call.
They're on call. And they have to be on call for that week before they get the day.
Yep. We can take it up on Friday. For me, it's easy to give you an answer today, but the problem is when we do that and then we don't stop to consider the impact of other organizations,
Right.
we're reminded that, we have 9 elected officials. Forget us 3, you've got another 6, right?
Yes, sir.
But the fact is, we are one county, and we are looked at legally as one county.
Right.
And so whenever we take up these issues, we need to be careful that we're not making exceptions that wouldn't necessarily hold up. I think it's reasonable, but we'll take it up on Friday.
And that's what I was just trying to do is make it equal across.
Yep.
All of our checks say the same thing.
Okay?
So I greatly appreciate it. I just don't want it to fall to the wayside and come in after the budget hearing saying, well, why didn't you bring it up during budget hearing? For a second time, because you guys have a lot of stuff going on.
Understood.
Appreciate
Okay,
your time. Thank you.
thank you. Dena, you okay?
Oh, I'm fine.
Okay. Michelle, are you okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Do we
Anything
have a
else?
choice?
Anyone else? No? Public comment? Nancy? How many folks?
Do the meeting tomorrow.
Curious. Okay. Hearing none, I have 1:42, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you Friday morning at 9 a.m.
Hey, Chris, we can cancel the Thursday meeting too.
Can we cancel? I was gonna ask you that. Can we cancel tomorrow?
We-
Okay, well, I'll have Chandra put a note out. Okay, good enough.